The autumn sun cast long shadows across the weathered boards of the Riverside Community Hall as 31-year-old rancher Cole Mitchell stood at the makeshift altar, his hands clenched nervously at his sides. He wore his best shirt and cleanest jeans, but nothing could disguise the desperation that had brought him to this moment, marrying a complete stranger to save his family's ranch. Beside him waited 28-year-old Hannah Whitmore, who had traveled from Kansas City with her own desperate reasons for accepting a marriage of convenience with a man she had never met. Her cream-colored dress was simple but elegant, and her blonde hair was styled carefully despite the circumstances that had brought her to this small Montana town. The arrangement had been made through a series of practical letters. Cole needed a wife to meet the terms of his grandfather's will, which required him to be married by his 32nd birthday, or lose the ranch that had been in his family for 3 generations. Hannah needed escape from creditors pursuing her after her late husband's gambling debts had left her nearly destitute. "We both understand this is a business arrangement," Cole had written in his final letter. "A partnership for mutual benefit, nothing more. Now," as Pastor Williams began the ceremony before a small gathering of neighbors and ranch hands, Cole found himself stealing glances at the woman who was about to become his wife. Hannah was not what he had expected from their correspondence, though he couldn't quite identify what surprised him most. "Do you, Cole Mitchell, take Hannah to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Pastor Williams asked. "I do," Cole replied, the words feeling strange in his mouth. "And do you, Hannah Whitmore, take Cole to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," Hannah said clearly, her voice steady despite the uncertainty of their situation. As they exchanged simple gold bands and sealed their union with a brief, awkward kiss, Cole wondered what he had gotten himself into. The ranch was saved, but now he had to figure out how to live with a stranger who would share his name and his home. The wedding reception was a modest affair in the same hall, with food prepared by neighboring ranch wives and fiddle music provided by Old Pete from the general store. Cole watched Hannah navigate the social situation with grace, thanking everyone for their kindness and asking thoughtful questions about the community she was now part of. "Your wife seems lovely," said Mrs. Patterson, the banker's wife, as she approached Cole near the refreshment table. "You're fortunate to have found someone so charming." Cole nodded politely, though he reflected that he hadn't found Hannah so much as arranged for her through correspondence and mutual necessity. The real surprise came the next morning. Cole woke at dawn as usual, planning to begin Hannah's orientation to ranch life gently, assuming she would need extensive guidance in adapting to rural living after her city upbringing. He found her in the kitchen, fully dressed and already preparing breakfast with an efficiency that suggested extensive experience. "Good morning," Hannah said, looking up from the stove where bacon was sizzling and coffee was brewing. "I hope you don't mind that I made myself at home in the kitchen." "I'm an early riser." "Not at all," Cole replied, surprised by the competence evident in her movements. "You seem comfortable with cooking." "I should be. I managed a boarding house for 3 years before my marriage to Robert, cooking for large groups, managing household budgets, organizing work schedules. It was good preparation for—" She gestured around the ranch kitchen. "Well, for whatever comes next." Cole sat down to a breakfast that was better than anything he had eaten since his mother's death 5 years earlier. The eggs were perfectly cooked, the bacon crisp, and the biscuits light and fluffy. "Hannah, this is excellent. In your letters, you didn't mention having experience with this kind of work." "You didn't ask about my work experience," Hannah replied with a slight smile. "You asked if I could manage a household and adapt to ranch life. I answered honestly that I could." Over the following days, Cole discovered that Hannah's surprises were just beginning. She proved to be not just competent in domestic tasks, but genuinely gifted in ways that transformed the efficiency of the entire ranch operation. When Cole mentioned struggling with the ranch's bookkeeping, Hannah asked to review the ledgers. Within a week, she had reorganized the entire accounting system, identified several costly inefficiencies, and developed a budgeting system that would improve their profit margins significantly. "Where did you learn to do this?" Cole asked as Hannah showed him her analysis of feed costs versus cattle weight gains. "Necessity," Hannah replied. When you're managing a boarding house that's barely breaking even, you learn to track every penny and find ways to stretch resources. The principles are the same whether you're feeding 10 boarders or 50 head of cattle, but Hannah's most shocking revelation came when Cole's prize bull, Thunder, escaped from his pen and began terrorizing the other cattle. The ranch hands were struggling to contain the massive animal when Hannah calmly walked into the corral, approached Thunder directly, and began speaking to him in a low, soothing voice. Within minutes, she had the bull calmed and was leading him back to his pen as if he were a gentle lamb. "How in the world did you do that?" Cole asked in amazement. "I grew up on my uncle's farm before my parents sent me to the city for schooling," Hannah explained. "I've always had a way with animals. They respond to confidence and calm energy." Cole stared at his wife with new understanding. "Hannah, why didn't you tell me about your background with farming and livestock?" "Because you didn't marry me for my farming skills," she replied matter-of-factly. "You married me because you needed a wife to keep your ranch. I married you because I needed security and a fresh start. I didn't think my other qualifications were relevant to our arrangement." That evening, as they sat on the porch after another day of discoveries about Hannah's capabilities, Cole found himself reassessing everything about their marriage. "Hannah, I need to apologize for something." "What's that?" "I made assumptions about who you were and what you could contribute here. I thought I was getting a city woman who would need extensive help adapting to ranch life. Instead, I got a partner who understands this work better than some people who've lived here their entire lives." Hannah studied his face in the lamplight. "And how do you feel about that?" "Honestly? Amazed, grateful, and a little ashamed that I didn't bother to really get to know you before we married." We were both solving practical problems. Cole. "But now that we're here, maybe we could try to build something real based on who we actually are instead of who we thought we were marrying." 6 months later, Cole Mitchell could hardly remember what life had been like before Hannah. She had transformed not just the ranch's efficiency, but the entire quality of their daily existence. Their marriage of convenience had evolved into a genuine partnership built on mutual respect, shared work, and growing affection. "You know what the real surprise was?" Cole said to Hannah one evening as they watched the sunset from their porch, her head resting on his shoulder in a gesture that had become natural over the months. "What's that?" "I thought I was making a sacrifice, marrying a stranger to save the ranch. But it turns out I was getting exactly what I needed, just not in the way I expected." Hannah smiled, thinking about her own journey from desperate escape to genuine belonging. "I learned something too." "What?" "That sometimes when we marry someone for practical reasons, we discover that the most practical thing of all is finding someone who sees our value and wants to build something meaningful together. Sometimes the biggest surprises come not from dramatic revelations, but from the gradual discovery that the person you thought you knew barely at all turns out to be exactly the partner you never dared to hope you could find. If this story reminded you that the most rewarding relationships often come from seeing and appreciating each other's true capabilities, please give it a like and share it with someone who believes in the power of partnership built on mutual respect. Subscribe for more stories about finding love through authentic partnership, and let us know in the comments about a time when someone surprised you by revealing talents or qualities you hadn't expected. Sometimes the most practical arrangements become the foundation for the most meaningful connections.